Rudy was the sole comfort in a mother's life following the demise of her eldest child and spouse, yet he too vanished into thin air. Today's narrative focuses on a different crime, yet this tale will avoid any gruesome scenes. Rather, the storyline will take a twist that will shock everyone familiar with this family. Hi, my name is Jeremy, and this is the True Crime Chronicles channel. Subscribe for the channel and we'll move on to history. Rose, an octogenarian, recently became a widow, leaving her with 6 grown children and grandchildren who adored spending time with her, creating a large, joyous family unit. They frequently visited her on weekends, bringing delicious snacks, engaging in conversations, and combing her hair, all efforts aimed at making sure Rosa never felt isolated. Occasionally, Rose would confuse their identities, mixing up her children with her grandchildren. On some days, she believed her deceased husband was still alive. Suffering from dementia, Rose's condition was variable. There were good days, but sometimes it seemed she was drifting further from reality. She would point towards a door at the corridor's end, insisting Rudy was there. Her grown children attempted to clarify that Rudy couldn't be there, yet Rose was adamant she had seen the young boy in that room. Rudy Farias was a teenager who had vanished in Houston 8 years prior. Nonetheless, their mother's dementia meant she sometimes couldn't grasp the reality of her statements. This incident took place in June 2023, presenting a faint possibility for further investigation into Rudy Farias' disappearance. 8 years prior, Jenny Santana's son, Rudy, vanished at 17. On the evening of March 6, 2015, he left to walk his 2 dogs. The animals returned separately to their home's front door, their leashes trailing, but Rudy was nowhere to be found. Jenny tirelessly pursued every minor lead in hopes of finding her son, to no avail. Amidst numerous recent tragedies in the Santana family, Jenny remained undeterred in her conviction that her son would be found. Speculation arose that his disappearance might be linked to his biological father. Rudy's father, a law enforcement officer, was found deceased with a gunshot wound in his patrol vehicle. Prior to this, Rudy's older brother had perished in a vehicular accident, and now Rudy himself had disappeared, leaving behind scant evidence to trace his whereabouts. Jenny, a determined mother, refused to surrender to despair. She actively engaged in online forums, keeping her son's name and case in the public eye, hoping to prevent his story from being forgotten. She theorized that his disappearance could be tied to human trafficking and criticized the state police for their inaction, suggesting a potential complicity within the law enforcement community that may be protecting criminals, thereby avoiding confrontation with powerful entities. Since she started vocally addressing the issue of human trafficking, Jenny sensed a looming threat to her safety. This apprehension was substantiated when Rudy's uncle, Jerry, met with a fatal motorcycle accident on the 2nd commemoration of his nephew's disappearance. Jerry had been dedicated to finding the young man. During the National Missing Persons Day, he delivered a heartfelt speech about Rudy's generous nature and his compassion towards others, underlining the sorrow of a mother bereft of her son. Although Jerry never explicitly stated that harm had come to Rudy shortly before his untimely demise, he reached out to the proprietor of a local social media outlet known as Voice of Houston, a platform the family often engaged with, to schedule a meeting. He purported to divulge critical information regarding Rudy's case at this meeting set for a week later. Tragically, Jerry passed away just a day before they were due to convene, hinting he might have stumbled upon sensitive details he was not supposed to uncover. With fading interest in Rudy's disappearance due to the absence of concrete evidence, Jenny, aided by volunteers and family members, crafted t-shirts adorned with her son's image and disseminated his photos online. This endeavor finally yielded results when, on the evening of June 29, 2023, a 911 emergency call reported an unconscious and injured individual outside the Immaculate Heart Church. The person, described as a young man in his 20s with minor injuries and bruises, was identified as Rudy Farias. Upon receiving the emergency call, law enforcement officers were initially uncertain of the man's identity, given that the young man had vanished 8 years earlier and his disappearance had faded into the background amid newer, unresolved cases. As the individual slowly came to, he was mute, exhibiting signs of fear and confusion. Lacking any form of identification or wallet, a significant lead discovered in his pocket eventually led to unraveling this heinous mystery. Authorities managed to identify the man and contacted his mother, Jenny Santana, to inform her of the extraordinary discovery. Recognizing her son by his eyes, Jenny affirmed his identity and hastened to his side, remaining there continuously. After 8 years of despair, Rudy's return seemed almost miraculous to his family. Though he had not yet spoken to authorities, it was anticipated that in time, once settled, and at peace within his family's embrace, he would disclose his experiences and how he came to be found near the church, miles from his home. Rudy showed signs of physical distress, with leg ulcers, various cuts and bruises, and dried blood in his hair. Yet these injuries were treatable with care and affection. Jenny then took to her social media to express gratitude towards everyone who had kept the search for Rudy alive, acknowledging she had no new details about his whereabouts during the missing years, but was committed to supporting his recovery from the ordeal. She noted that any attempt to discuss his past led him to withdraw completely, becoming silent and adopting a fetal position. Nevertheless, Jenny expressed profound thanks for her son's return after such a lengthy absence. A constant in Rudy's life, the pendant of his late brother, remained with him. Yet, the narrative was poised for an unforeseen shift. The discovery of a credit card in the young man's pocket, issued in Jenny Santana's name just 2 years prior, was a crucial lead for the police in piecing together the enigma of his disappearance. Given Rudy's 8-year absence, the existence of a relatively recent credit card linked to his mother raised significant questions. As detectives delved into inquiries with neighbors and Jenny's family members, they unearthed intriguing information. The local community expressed their astonishment upon hearing national news reports of Rudy Farias' dramatic recovery. They were convinced they had seen him at his mother's residence not long before, unaware of any missing person case related to Jenny. The collective surprise was amplified by media narratives, especially since the young man they recognized was referred to not as Rudy but as Dolph, despite Rudy not having a twin. Neighbors consistently described Dolph as somewhat introverted, yet approachable, often seen mingling in the street or joining card games in garages. Described as gentle and amiable, Dolph, however, appeared perpetually bewildered, regularly accompanied by his mother on evening walks to her workplace. Jenny seemed to promote her son's engagement with the neighbors, recommending dinner invitations or small monetary gifts as gestures of gratitude for their friendliness. Considering Rudy's complete name as Rudolph, bearing a close resemblance to Dolph, the neighbors were bewildered by how such a circumstance came to be. It was revealed that Dolph and Rudy were the same person, who had disappeared for nearly 8 years. However, the question arises, why did all the news broadcasts claim the boy had been discovered, particularly when, as per the neighbors, he hadn't vanished in the first place? If his mother knew about this, what was the reason behind her frequent participation in missing persons forums and her melancholic updates on social media? Who, indeed, is Jenny Santana? When this lady encountered her most recent spouse, she was already a mother to a boy named Rudy, while her future partner had a child from a past relationship. They were on the path to forming a large, blended family. The sons hit it off immediately. Rudy was thrilled to gain a brother, Charles, who was 8 years his senior. All seemed perfect until a year into the marriage, when the husband discovered Jenny was concurrently married to another man, marking this her 5th marital venture. It turned out, after parting ways with her previous spouse, Santana had no desire to finalize a divorce. Furthermore, she exhibited hostile behavior towards her partner. For her unlawful actions, she incurred a fine of $43,000. Additionally, her siblings initiated legal action against her for the neglect of their aging mother, Rosa, Jenny's mother, who was in her late years and struggled with dementia. The matriarch required continuous attention. While the siblings were willing to provide care, Santana persuaded their mother that staying with her and Rudy was the optimal choice. The family held affection for Jenny, but lamented the living conditions Rosa endured in the home. The environment was marked by chaos and poor hygiene, with Rosa relegated to a soiled, damp couch for sleep. The home's interior was littered with animal waste due to a lack of cleaning. There were even instances where Rosa was hospitalized due to infected bed sores. The siblings attempted to communicate with Rosa, but her cognitive abilities were impaired. Jenny showed no intention of making any adjustments, prompting them to resort to legal action against Santana for maintaining a residence that was neither clean, secure, nor appropriate for an elderly person's habitation. They alleged in court that their sister was a compulsive liar who failed to adequately look after their mutual mother. Yet, Jenny's affection for Rosa seemed anything but warm. She appeared primarily motivated by the financial benefits provided by the state for caregiving, or so her relatives suspected. At first sight, Jenny Santana presented herself as a devoted single mother. But beneath the surface, she harbored peculiar habits, including a deep fixation on social media. Her leisure time was consumed by her online presence, where she engaged in a unique form of interaction, primarily with herself. Jenny crafted multiple fake profiles to leave comments on her own uploads and engaged in elaborate dialogues across these accounts, posing questions and crafting responses as if she were multiple individuals. This charade was aimed at crafting an illusion of popularity on her social media platforms, showcasing a profile bustling with activity. Like many, Jenny had a penchant for theatrics and could escalate minor issues into dramatic episodes. On one occasion, her son Rudy experienced leg swelling. After a visit to their family physician, who confirmed the swelling was benign, Jenny nonetheless rushed him to the emergency room, urging him to claim he had ingested numerous pills in an attempt to escape a supposed cancer diagnosis. Following his hospitalization, Jenny captured and shared an image of Rudy in his hospital bed, misleading her audience into believing he was battling cancer, fearing the loss of her son. Some netizens theorized that Jenny might be exhibiting signs of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a condition where caregivers fabricate or induce medical issues in those they care for, seeking attention and sympathy through fabricated narratives of sacrifice and suffering. However, children often exhibit traits distinct from their parents, and Rudy was a prime example of this divergence. Despite Rudy's social environment largely being composed of his mother and her numerous partners, his personality starkly contrasted with Jenny's. Rudy was innately compassionate and kind-hearted, always ready to assist others in distress, even if it was merely a stray cat. Growing up, he was notably shy, gentle, and introverted. Aside from his mother, his only genuine confidant was his cherished stepbrother Charles, who served as both a paternal figure and an elder brother to him. Rudy aspired to emulate Charles, especially when Charles chose to serve in the Marine Corps, inspiring Rudy to pursue a future in the military as well. On a fateful day, while Jenny and Rudy were at home, a phone call abruptly changed everything. Upon receiving distressing news, Jenny, in a state of panic, hurried Rudy outside. That day, Charles had been involved in a motorcycle accident close to their residence. The Farias, along with their mother, reached him before the paramedics could. At just 13, Rudy was confronted with the harrowing sight of his older brother and closest ally dying by the roadside in Houston, an experience that profoundly affected his young mind. On the first anniversary of Charles's tragic demise, Rudy, despite his young age, took to social media to articulate his sorrow. He commemorated a year since Charles had gone to be with the Lord, expressing regret over his unspoken affections for Charles. Rudy wished for nothing more than the return of his dearest friend. 3 years subsequent to Charles's passing, Rudy's biological father also died, albeit their interactions had been minimal. The father was discovered in his patrol car, a victim of suicide. As a police officer who had been dismissed for fabricating reports and unjustly issuing excessive speeding tickets for personal gain, he couldn't face the humiliation and impending legal repercussions. Engaged in this deceit for 3 years, he had accumulated over $150,000 through bogus overtime. Unable to confront the scandal and the loss of his career, he chose to end his life following his dismissal. Rudy Farias, who effectively grew up fatherless, faced the devastating reality that he would never have the opportunity to rebuild a relationship with his father, a realization that severely impacted his already vulnerable mental state. He grappled with a tumultuous mix of resentment, sorrow, and anger. By the age of 16, Rudy had already endured the loss of 2 irreplaceable figures in his life, his stepbrother and his biological father. Despite his sophisticated understanding of mourning, at his core, Rudy retained the innocence of a young boy. His relatives observed that emotionally, Farias mirrored the characteristics of a 10-year-old, equally trusting, gentle, sweet, and naively youthful. Then, Rudy vanished. Over the next 8 years, Jenny recounted the tale of his disappearance following a routine dog walk, an outing that typically lasted 15 to 20 minutes. After 2 hours had elapsed without Rudy's return, Jenny was struck by a wave of maternal fear when she heard barking at the door. Rushing to see, she found only one of the dogs, its leash trailing, having made its way back alone. She surmised that Rudy had gone in search of the other dog, leading to his delay. It wasn't until the following morning that the second dog returned, but Rudy was nowhere to be found. In a state of alarm, Jenny immediately notified the police. However, in her distressed state, she confused her son's birth date, leading the officers to mistakenly consider Farias as an adult. Consequently, their response lacked urgency, presuming the teenager had merely decided to leave home of his own accord. The search operation focused on Rudy's usual walking route, where they discovered a backpack containing notebooks and an asthma inhaler, items Jenny confirmed belonged to her son. Yet, there was no evidence to suggest any criminal activity. The detectives classified the teenager as missing, and Jenny adopted the role of a bereaved parent. She quickly produced and distributed posters featuring her son's image throughout the city, rallying the support of the police, relatives, friends, and the broader community in the search effort, who all showed empathy and offered their assistance. As time passed, the narrative of Rudy's disappearance gradually receded into the background, with shifts in law enforcement personnel and the community moving forward with their lives. Jenny stood as the sole figure steadfastly committed to the quest for her son. She established a webpage dedicated to Rudy's search, appealing to the empathy of the public, which resulted in over $2,000 in donations to aid in the effort. With the official investigation stalling over the years, Santana turned to online forums and social media to voice her concerns, sensing that something was deeply wrong. She professed a desire to journey to Reynosa, a town straddling the border between the USA and Mexico, convinced that Rudy had fallen prey to human trafficking, and resolved to undertake a personal mission to rescue him. Jenny depicted the venture to relatives and friends as perilous and daunting, even initiating a fundraising campaign to finance the endeavor. Yet, those close to her viewed Reynosa as a common destination for tourists and speculated that Santana might be seeking an excuse for a brief getaway, leveraging Rudy's situation as a means to gather funds. They had previously supported her through similar endeavors, dropping everything to join her on trips whenever there were claims of Rudy sightings across the nation. Following each unsuccessful search, Santana would lament on social media about the pain of being separated from her son, beseeching guardian angels to protect him in her absence. Through her posts, she directly communicated with Rudy, expressing her profound longing for him. Simultaneously, as she crafted these sorrowful narratives, Rudy was actually at home. For 8 years, Jenny had kept him isolated, confined behind a locked door. While not physically restrained with chains, Rudy was subjected to psychological captivity, stripped of his liberty. Farias grew disillusioned with the treatment he received at home, feeling a profound disrespect for his personal boundaries. His mother consistently overstepped these limits, prompting Rudy to make the decision to flee. His attempt at liberation lasted roughly 24 hours, for by the following day, he had returned home, a detail only Jenny was privy to. It seemed the mother chose to use this episode as both a punitive measure and an opportunity to garner attention for herself. Upon his return from a walk with the dogs, after being absent for several hours, Rudy intended to apologize for the concern he caused. However, Jenny informed him that he was now the subject of a police search. She fabricated a story about him receiving a speeding ticket days prior, and, with his disappearance already reported, implied the authorities believed he was evading legal consequences. Now branded a criminal, Rudy, lacking sophistication in legal matters, and trusting in the inherent truthfulness expected of a mother to her child, believed her. Thus, he spent the initial day secluded in his room, which extended into a week, then a year, under his mother's manipulative influence. Every time visitors arrived, Rudy would retreat to his room and remain utterly silent, a prisoner in his own home. Rosa, Rudy's grandmother, aware of his presence, attempted to inform her children of this fact on multiple occasions. However, Rudy's aunts and uncles dismissed her claims as the confused utterances of someone suffering from senile dementia, paying no heed to her assertions. After the case settled down, Jenny allowed her son to occasionally go out to visit neighbors, but now she called him Dolph. His missing posters displayed his photo at the age of 14. It's no wonder many didn't recognize him. His mother believed that a childhood photo would evoke more sympathy from people. Sometimes she would give her son her credit card and send him to the store for groceries or other errands. To prevent him from realizing that she was using him, she would mix forbidden substances and sedatives into his food, making him sluggish and unable to think objectively. Jenny continued to threaten him with jail and the police, so he reluctantly stayed within the confines of the family home. There were many rumors that the mother was behaving inappropriately with the adult son. She'd go into his bathroom without knocking, make Rudy lie with her under the blanket without clothes. However, the boy himself tweaked that there were some intimate moments between them. He thought his mother still treated him like a child and just played the husband. It turns out that the family also saw Rudy in town more than once and reported it to the police. Uniforms would come to Santano's house and even look inside, but without a warrant, they couldn't get inside. During this time, Jenny behaved calmly, without arousing any suspicion from the officers. The cops were leaving, and they said the lead was false. No law enforcement officer, no family member, no one could have imagined that the teenager had been living peacefully under the roof of his Owen House L this time, only rarely outside. After enduring 8 years of confinement at home, Rudy devised a plan. In the dead of night, he seized his mother's car keys and credit card, then stealthily departed without a clear destination in mind. Despite not having driven for 8 years, he managed only a few minutes behind the wheel before crashing the vehicle, sustaining numerous cuts and bruises in the process. Abandoning the keys in the car, Rudy proceeded on foot until he reached a church. Overwhelmed and fatigued, he collapsed, signaling his reunion with his family. Jenny, seeking sympathy, shared a photo of Rudy in a hospital bed on social media, an image from 8 years prior when he was hospitalized due to a leg tumor. Urgently, the authorities sought to transfer Farias to a hospital, but his mother persuaded them that his condition would deteriorate there, opting instead to take him home. In reality, she feared Rudy would divulge the truth once fully conscious. On July 5, 2023, Rudy finally found the courage to speak, confiding only in a local activist named Quanell X, known for championing the rights of discrimination victims. Quan assisted individuals in bringing attention to their cases through media coverage and negotiations with law enforcement. Despite Jenny's persistent interference during the conversation, Rudy managed to convey his version of events. Eventually, it became apparent that Jenny's presence was hindering the discussion, and she was asked to leave the room. During their conversation, signs of self-harm on Rudy's body were observed, indicating the toll of his confinement. Despite his discomfort sharing a bed with his mother, Rudy emphasized his enduring love for her as a son. Quanell publicly stated that a mother who committed such acts should be held accountable for her crimes, expressing astonishment that Santana remained free from handcuffs. Rudy Farias' narrative deeply affected him. However, later that same night, Rudy returned home with his mother. Jenny resorted to emotional manipulation, threatening self-harm unless Rudy recanted his story to the police. Unaware that their conversation was being recorded, Santana continued to adhere to her fabricated account. During a press conference, the police declared their decision not to press charges against Jenny at this time, citing a lack of concrete evidence of her wrongdoing. Rudy is presently residing with a family acquaintance. Yet, the extent to which his mother might employ additional manipulations to regain custody of her son and seek further attention from social media remains uncertain. The International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which operates globally, reports that hundreds of thousands of minors are reported missing annually, with parents frequently implicated in their disappearances. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.